Ladies, mental gen, railbikes and railcars, welcome to another episode of Rank 10 Yu-Gi-Oh's Legacy of the Worthless. If you aren't familiar yet, in this series we're looking at the most unplayable archetypes ever shut out by Konami's executive asshole, what exactly makes those archetypes so horrible, and what could have been improved in order for them to be less awful. The grading scale we use involves consistency, power, comeback ability, protection and versatility, and an archetype is considered terrible if it doesn't excel in any of these categories. With that said, let's begin this episode's topic. If you had a choice, what would be the way you would orchestrate your own inevitable demise? Maybe a peaceful passing away in your sleep? Perhaps a meteor just happens to strike Earth right when you reach the finale of your favorite TV show? Or maybe you would prefer death by snoo-snoo! Well, Konami's got you covered on that! The Amazoness archetype is arguably one of the greatest, most gracious and beautiful yet god-awfully executed ideas Konami has ever had for this game. How exactly do you fuck up a series of cards based on badass, formidable warrior girls? Well, we're only about to find out, so hit up that solarium and get some fake tattoos, cause it's tribal time! Before I start, I just want to point out that I am well aware of the new Amazoness quote-unquote support from Arc 5, but first of all, I frankly don't think these are ever gonna be printed, and even if they are, it's not exactly any kind of support that would make them tier 1 or anything, or even rogue for that matter, so I simply decided not to wait for them. Amazoness Scouts is a level 2 with 500 attack and 1100 defense, and serves as something that was supposed to be protection for the archetype. During either player's turn, contribute this card to make all your Amazoness monsters untargetable by monster effects and prevent them from being destroyed by any card effects. The buff is actually pretty good even though it only stays active for a single turn, but the problem lies in the fact that this is pretty much the only non-battle oriented protection the archetype has. The Amazoness are an archetype primarily focused on combat, and something that protects them from many forms of removal such as this card is surely something they need, but definitely not in the form it's in right now. They really aren't good at swarming the field, as we'll see later on, so their protection just kinda relies on a single normal summon of a 500 attack monster. This should have probably just been a quick play spell. Ah well, guess this is what happens when you try using little Amazonian children as meat shields. They're not very durable, you know. Starting the trend of the beautiful, muscular, bronze warrior girls the archetype is known for is Amazoness Blowpiper. Fitting to her name, she blows! A pipe, you fucking degenerates, I can see you smirking. During each of your standby phases, target one monster the opponent controls, and that monster loses 500 attack until the end of this turn. Obviously, the idea was setting this in defense mode, having the opponent run into it using something with 1500 attack or less, and then slightly scratching that monster for some additional damage during your next turn. The problem in here, though, is that you might as well just run some other, better outdated attack manipulation bullshit like, I don't know, goddamn Shrink, or Reinforcements, or Shape Snap. Next up is Amazoness Tiger, and this kitty cat really looks like it needs to be put down as fast as possible because it's falling apart worse than my cremated Serbian ancestors. You can only control one Amazoness Tiger, it gains 400 attack for each Amazoness monster you control, and the opponent cannot attack another Amazoness monster. I would call this kind of protection decent if there wasn't for that one specific line, which would be you can only control one Amazoness Tiger. If you could control two of them, that would completely prevent the opponent from attacking until they get rid of them by other means, which would kinda be decent for the time this card was released in, but right now it only serves as a mediocre beater and a form of protection that barely ever mattered in any period of the game. I think we can safely conclude that this one is a catastrophe. Amazoness Sage is a level 4 with 1400 attack and the following effect. At the end of the damage step, if this card attacked and is still on the field, target one spell or trap card your opponent controls, destroy that target. Oh wow, Konami really power creeped that stealth droid. What's next? A quick play spell that just destroys any backer on the field for no cost? Oh, yeah, anyway, cool artwork wasted on a slow and inefficient removal effect. Not much else to say here. Now going way back to when Converse shoes were still the hottest shit and liking MSI was somehow hip and cool, we have Amazoness Archer, the very first Amazoness card before archetypes were even a thing. It's a level 4 with 1400 attack, and its effect is you can tribute 2 monsters to deal 1200 damage to the opponent, as in not once per turn. I smell an FTK, let me check something. Hey, yep, that's an FTK 5 or so on. Good old Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro forums. If you're the kind of hipster that feels they're too cool to use Cannon Soldier and prefers their cards with a higher cost, go ahead and try out Amazoness Archer in a gimmicky FTK deck, but I wouldn't recommend running this in an actual Amazoness build. Amazoness TRAINEE is a level 4 with 1500 attack and the following effect. Monsters destroyed by battle with this card are returned to the bottom of the owner's deck instead of going to the graveyard. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, this card gains 200 attack. Well, it prevents BA from floating. I don't know what other argument you need to consider this a 10 out of 10. Jokes aside, it's a decent effect, but considering this card's relatively low attack, it will rarely ever be relevant, although if you happen to be running Moon Mirror Shield, it could allow for a quick chuckle before you get curb stomped next turn. Next up is Amazoness Fighter. Oh my god, lady, your anatomy, what did they do to you? You look like a gender-bent pillar man from JoJo. It's everything I never knew I wanted. Wow, jeez. Anyway, mountain body aside, the card itself is actually nothing special. It's a level 4 with 1500 attack, and you take no battle damage from battles involving this card. This has some synergy with the rest of the archetype because there are a few effects that make you benefit by getting your Amazoness destroyed by battle, so negating battle damage while pulling that off sounds decent. However, the thing is, this monster literally has a straight upgrade in the same archetype, that being Amazoness Swordswoman. It's another level 4 with 1500 attack, but higher defense, and also, while you take no battle damage, the opponent takes all damage you would have taken from battles involving this card. It's the exact same thing as Fighter, but better. It's also one of the only Amazoness monsters I would consider decent. Not too good, mind you, it's still kind of a one-trick pony and dies to battle as easily as most of her sisters, but it's a little fun and unique way of dealing indirect damage if you happen to be overpowered by the opponent. In combination with a certain field spell that lets you float into other Amazoness monsters, Triple Swordswoman is kind of what this archetype would consider a staple. So yeah, this is basically just Amazoness Fighter with a sword. I know, it's genius. Who would have thought that a weapon would prove to be more useful than your bare hands? Don't tell that to Battle Warrior though, he fights with his bare hands! You gon' catch these hands! Amazoness Chainmaster is another level 4 with 1500 attack and has a pretty interesting effect. When it's destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can pay 1500 life points to look at your opponent's hand, select one monster card in it, and add that card to your hand. Curious fact, this card, Exchange, and to an extent Battling Boxer Cheat Commissioner are the only cards that allow you to snatch things from the opponent's hand. Well, this effect is not exactly good, mostly due to the fact that the opponent will have emptied their hand of monsters by the time they get into the battle phase, as well as the fact that you'll most likely be stealing a part of an engine you don't need. It's still kinda fun to pull off, because this monster is the last thing people expect when attacking a face down these days. However, you're naturally better off saving that 1500 for a solemn strike instead. But here's food for thought. Just imagine how many cars got stolen by kids on locals by using Chainmaster. Amazoness Paladin is our last level 4 with 1700 attack and gains a grand total of 100 attack for each Amazoness monster you control. Girl, you should probably value your friends a bit more than that, you know. Then again, not like any boost below 400 would matter that much here, so basically all this card's supposed to be is an 1800 beater that can rise up to an amazing value of 2200 if your entire field is filled up with Amazoness. And the saddest thing is, this is still worth running way more than most Amazoness monsters simply due to it being a decent level 4 attacker, something this battle-focused archetype surprisingly lacks. And the last Amazoness monster is Amazoness Queen, a level 6 with 2400 attack, 1800 defense, beautiful legs, a huge sword, a stoic, inspirational, commanding face, and the following effect. Amazoness monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. That's it, that's the whole thing. Jeez, how about a special summoning condition at least? That would be nice. The usefulness of the effect itself is debatable because while Battle Protection is nice, pretty much the only card that really benefits from it is Swordswoman, and even if the card had any other additional effects, Amazoness aren't exactly an archetype that can provide sustainable tribute fodder. Given that this was supposed to be their boss monster, Queen needed at least like 2 more effects here, especially one that would help with swarming. Still though, please step on me. Anyway, that degeneracy aside, here are some spells and traps. Amazoness Village is a field spell that increases the attack of all Amazoness monsters you control by 200. Also, once per turn when an Amazoness monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon another Amazoness monster from your deck with a lower or equal level to that monster. The attack boost is among the most insignificant in the game when it comes to field spells, and while the second effect won't turn any tides around or anything, it's a fun combo with Swordswoman, allowing you to crash 2 of them for additional damage, and it works decently with Warrior Lady of the Wasteland, effectively enabling you to float at least 4 times if you didn't happen to draw all of them. It's not amazing, but for the time period, it did a decent job at having you maintain field presence. Also, I just know some of you already plan to make Amazoness Metal Foes a thing because this has a destroyed by card effects clause, so here's a life pro tip from me who actually attempted that. Please, love yourself, do not try making Amazoness Metal Foes a thing. Amazoness Spellcaster, which is somehow not a monster, allows you to target one Amazoness monster you control and one face-up monster your opponent controls and switch their attack until the end of the turn. So this is actually pretty fun to use, at least on a casual level, but can you imagine if this didn't target? I wanna run our Chaos Max with Amazoness Scouts. I want to see these 2 children with toy weapons slay a gigantic behemoth Dragon's Dogma style for 3500 damage. That's what I want. Sadly that's not the case, but this is still kind of worth running since the opponent is likely to make something way stronger than most of your Amazoness during their first turn. Ah, how I wish this was a quick play. Amazoness Heirloom is an equip spell which you can equip to any Amazoness monster. Once per turn, that monster cannot be destroyed by battle, and when that monster attacks, you can destroy the attack target instantly. This is legitimately a decent effect, especially combined with something like Swordswoman, but the fact that it's limited to an equip severely hinders its potential. I think if the instant destruction effect was a once per turn clause on Amazoness Queen or the field spell, those cards would be a lot more worth running, but the way Heirloom is right now is just a neat effect slapped onto an inherently situational type of spell card. Still though, for what the Amazoness are, this could certainly be a lot worse. Now, speaking of things that should have been a part of a field spell, here's Amazoness Fighting Spirit. If an Amazoness monster attacks a monster with higher attack, the attacking monster gains 1000 attack during damage calculation only. Now you may be saying, but they can't put that on the field spell because it already has several effects and it would be overpowered for the time, just look at Skyscraper. Which would be a fair argument if Amazoness Fighting Spirit wasn't a card that was released 5 years after Skyscraper. The worst part is that this is, again, a pretty legit effect for an archetype focused on fighting, but it's just barely worth running because it's an unsearchable continuous spell and no, Watchdog doesn't count. Now, whereas the spells all kinda fell under the category of not great but not quite shit, the traps for the most part are just made out of rancid liquid ass. Let's start off with the least bad one in my opinion. Queen Spawn, featuring the titular queen going "fuck outta here, pleb," has the following effect. Activate only when an Amazoness monster destroys an opponent's monster and sends it to the graveyard. Special summon one level 4 or lower Amazoness monster from your deck. So, for a bunch of cards centered around beatdown, this could certainly find its use here and there, but why couldn't this be a continuous once per turn? Did they realize how much of a difference they're making between advantage and disadvantage as well as potential bricking by not having this be a continuous trap? I mean, you could say it would be a bit overpowered for the time, but it still relies on you actually destroying the opponent's monsters as opposed to other obnoxious swarming cards that were available during that period. Amazoness Shamanism is a normal trap that lets you destroy all face-up Amazoness monsters you control, then you can special summon any number of level 4 or lower Amazoness monsters from your graveyard in face-up defense position up to the number of monsters destroyed by this effect. But why though? Are you really going to need those Amazoness from the graveyard so badly that you'd be willing to nuke your entire field for them? That's basically the only use of this thing. Well, at least MST doesn't stop it if we really have to pull at straws here. And no, you can't combo it with a field spell because it misses timing. Whoop-de-fucking-when. Amazoness Archers, not to be confused with Amazoness Archer, who's not even on this picture, is a normal trap that you can activate when an opponent declares an attack while you control an Amazoness monster. All monsters they control are switched to attack position, must attack with all their monsters that turn, and all of their monsters that are currently on the field lose 500 attack for as long as they're face up on the field. Oh no, my 500 attack points, whatever shall I do? Jokes aside, I could see this being fun to use like 6 years ago casually on a locals against a Gen X player or something, but really there's no relevant utility here. Most monsters nowadays couldn't care less if you scratch them for 500, but admittedly this card did kinda come out 12 years ago, so I'm willing to cut it some slack. Dramatic Rescue is another normal trap and it does the following. Activate only when a card is activated that targets an Amazoness monster. Return the targeted monster to the hand and special summon one other monster from your hand. Is this how you're supposed to summon Queen? I mean, don't get me wrong, there are cards you would want to run in Amazoness that target your monsters, but you wouldn't want to return them to the hand if you're doing so. Then again, you could wait for the opponent to target one of your monsters with an effect and then replace it with whatever happens to be in your hand at the moment. You know, it's kinda curious how they let you summon any monster instead of just Amazoness, as if they're implying you could possibly be running anything that would be even remotely relevant to summon at that moment while playing this deck. I mean, I get the idea behind this one, but it's a bit too situational to ever consider running. And the final Amazoness card is also the funniest one, that being Amazoness Willpower. Target one Amazoness monster in your graveyard and special summon it in attack position. It cannot change its battle position and must attack if able. When this card is removed from the field, destroy that monster. When that monster is destroyed, destroy this card. So at first glance this is just kind of a below mediocre revival card. So why is it the funniest? It's literally just Call of the Haunted, but worse. Indeed, Amazoness Willpower is just Call of the Haunted, but with a dumb restriction, and was only made because Call of the Haunted was limited, and it went back to unlimited 2 formats later, so Willpower had an optimal playtime of around 4 to 6 months. Sorry Amazoness, but this Willpower of yours might have just been a bit too strong for your own good. Well, that was shorter than I had expected. Let's start wrapping it up with some grades. Consistency. I'll go ahead and say they're definitely more consistent than most archetypes I reviewed here, save maybe for Worms, because they have access to Rhoda, Warrior Lady of the Wasteland, and Giant Rat even can search out almost all of them. The field spell helps out as well. Getting to your Amazoness monsters is generally not a problem. As for everything else, power. You know, for an archetype that's all about the battle phase, they're kinda embarrassingly lacking in this regard. Their regular stats are mediocre and all attack booster cards they have are either too situational or too insignificant. Comeback ability. Well, Shamanism doesn't do anything relevant in this case because it requires you to have monsters present in the first place, and willpower might as well just be replaced with Call of the Haunted. Protection. There are a few cards that let the Amazoness stay on the battlefield and let them live to die another day, but one of them is a tribute monster, the other is an equip spell, and the third can be ran over by fucking Frog the Jam. As for the versatility, anything that runs removal not focused on combat is able to wipe the floor with this deck. That's all there is to it. Now, unlike a previous couple of videos, I actually have some ideas on how this archetype could have been improved. First of all, more swarming ability. A monster akin to Satellite Vega that special summons another Amazoness from the hand would be pretty nice, especially if said monster also had some kind of battle-related effect. Second, extra deck monsters. Amazoness Empress from the anime is actually a pretty good card, but its fusion materials are any Amazoness monster and Amazoness Queen, which people don't really tend to run, although you could always search it out with one of the many new fusion support cards. However, I don't think a new boss monster is exactly what they need, because a rank 4 Xyz, for example, could be something that allows you to search out more Amazoness or summon them from the graveyard. Third, a new field spell would be in order. The current one is obviously a relic from the middle of the Synchro era, so it's a bit rough around the edges, so getting a field that has better synergy with the combat-oriented nature of the deck and maybe gives them a little side protection would be quite nice. Next, they need a few monsters that give an overall better win condition. Obviously the goal is unconventional beatdown, but there's nothing really bad with making it a bit more conventional, you know? The two fusion boss monsters from the anime are kinda what I'm referring to, more stuff that makes the opponent scared when you enter the battle phase. And finally, just overall better trap support. It's perfectly fitting both for the tribal team of the deck as well as its playstyle to have multiple ways of surprising the opponent with nasty lockdown or stun cards, or maybe even some unexpected attack manipulation. I'm gonna feel really stupid when they announce they're actually printing the two fusion monsters in the upcoming Fusion Enforcers, aren't I? Oh well, I don't presume much will change about the state of the archetype anyway, because two big beaters with specific materials aren't exactly the only thing this deck needs to work, which is a real shame because my beautiful buff queens deserve way better than this, I tell you. Obviously, the only rational thing to do right now is send progressively larger bone-carved swords to Konami until they get the message, and make an Amazoness pachinko machine. Ladies and gentlemen, railbikes and railcars, I did not expect this video to be this short, wow. Anyway, thank you for watching, do remember to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.